In America, September 24, 2019 by Anna von Reitz. One of the fundamental misunderstandings I encounter, and by that I mean that I encounter this coast to coast and around the world, is the outrage people unleash on me and anyone else who happens to be standing nearby, when they first realize that they have been abused and defrauded by commercial governmental services corporations. What business or right does this thing have, and they insert their favorite pet irritation to me. Well, it doesn't. The good news is that they can only presume what your political status is, or depend on your mother to make a mistake and misidentify you as a U.S. citizen for them. She is, of course, assuming that they mean state citizen of the United States, but they are talking about the British Territorial or Municipal United States instead. In this way, via this semantic deceit based on similar names, assisted by a lot of trusting gullibility, millions of Americans have been misidentified as foreigners in their own country. And treated as such, too. And this in turn means being in a foreign political status, subject to foreign law, and responsible for paying foreign taxes. Americans and people around the world are understandably upset when they realize, 1. The thing they thought was their government is just a commercial corporation in the business of providing governmental services, and 2. They have been the victims of unlawful conversion, pillaging, racketeering, asset stripping and other evils as a result. And they are right. These corporations don't have any right to do the things they are doing. But on the flip side, we are unwittingly letting them operate this way, and letting their presumptions stand against us by, 1. Failing to declare our political status and record it, and 2. Failing to take responsibility to self-govern and operate our own government. Once we wake up and take charge of the situation, we find that nobody and nothing is dictating our political status. We have some greedy, power-hungry corporations to deal with and rebuff, but the choice of how we live and what kind of political status we choose is up to us. We have to know the verbiage and the choices and choose the right political status for ourselves. And then we have the responsibility to rebuild and restore the actual government we are owed. Pope Francis recently shocked the world by claiming that we have an obligation to obey the United Nations. This is because the United Nations is the new face of the Unum Sanctum Trust. The Pope's saying that this is so, doesn't make it so. Where have we, individually or as a nation, accepted any such obligation? We haven't. He and his municipal employees and dependents may have such an obligation to the UN, and may have accepted the UN as their government, but any idea that the rest of us embrace this obligation is based on false premises, especially when you consider that the UN Corp that would be acting as the worldwide governmental services provider, and taxing us all however it saw fit, was set up by Vichy French Nazi collaborators prior to the end of World War II and is tainted by hideous criminality. The Pope has obviously not learned his lessons, but hopefully the rest of us have had enough and will not be obedient to such masters no matter what kind of peace and love and world unity top dressing they give it. In other words, just as the British Crown and its corrupt American collaborators are trying to move their base of operations to China to avoid criminal prosecution here and in Europe, the Pope is trying to set up another storefront for the monstrous crime syndicate the Holy See has been running. Instead of using the Roman Catholic Church as a front, they propose to use the United Nations organization instead. Here's to the new boss, same as the old boss, only worse this time, because absolute power does corrupt absolutely. Instead of promoting consolidation of power into one already grotesquely criminal commercial corporation, the Pope and everyone else should be deploying empowerment back to each one of us and showing respect for our mutual divine origin. Everyone who wants the UN Corp in charge of as much as a dog kennel, raise your hands. Everyone who is sick and tired of letting criminal commercial corporations milk and bilk people and then skate away to cause trouble in new locations, raise your hands. Everyone who is fed up with the popes using good organizations as cover for hideous criminality, raise your hands. If I have one urgent message to deliver to the people of the world today, it would echo Nancy Reagan's famous and heartfelt, "Just say, no. Say it and mean it and let it be heard." No, Pope Francis. You are not going to use the United Nations like you used the Roman Catholic Church as a storefront for criminals. No, British Crown. The days when you and your buddies in the Dutch East India Company could just sail over the horizon, taking your shareholders' gold with you, are over. We know who the criminals among us are and we've had enough. Government of China, we stood behind you when you wanted the New York Fed to return the Chinese nationalist gold left on deposit there. We did that because it was the right thing to do. Chinese gold belongs to China and the Chinese people. Now please have the wisdom, courtesy, dignity, courage, and decency to return the favor. Jail the known criminals and return our gold to us. Don't let these con artists use and abuse China as they have used and abused Europe and the United States, because whatever sops they are offering now, and however good the deal seems, you will be cherishing a parasitic viper, and condemning yourselves and everyone else on the planet to yet another round of violence and criminality.